Void Legendaries are some of the most powerful champions in the entire game. Some even better than Mythicals in my opinion. What's up guys? What's going on? Scrotor here, keeping it tanky in Raid Shadow Legends. And I had a fun time making a recent video talking about which legendary would I want most from each faction when starting a new account using my promo link in the description. So I thought, what the heck? Void Legendaries are so significant and I haven't even gotten one on my main account yet. So I thought I would go through and do the same thing again for each Void Legendary. Starting off with the Banner Lords, we have Marichka the Unbreakable. I had a hard time deciding whether it would be better to have Marichka or Karas, but I think that supports typically are better champions, and while she is a reviver and with this start in the game you can have 3 right off the bat. Hold up, click the link in the description right now to get a free Uugo as well as 2 more free epic champions as you level up. Here are the steps to get yours. Step 1, log out of Plarium Play on PC and uninstall. Step 2, click the link in the description and register with a brand new email. Step 3, launch Raid and complete the tutorial. Step 4, go to your inbox and claim your first champ. This is an amazing account start to Raid, so click the link and start now. Honestly, she's such a unique reviver that she's still worth having as quickly as possible. On the A1, one random ally will team up and join the attack. The ally joining the attack will use their default skill. Fantastic for setting up early damage. A2 fully restores any allies' decreased max HP, then heals all allies by 40% of this champion's max HP. Massive, massive heal. Places a shield buff and a protected strengthen on all allies for 2 turns. Value of this shield is equal to 20% of this champion's max HP. That will be a beefy shield, and protected strengthen means that you are going to be negating a ton of damage, which is valuable in any area of the game. On the A3, she fully cleanses the team, then fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%, and fills the turn meter of each ally by an extra 5% for each debuff removed from them. Increases the resistance of all allies by 5 for each debuff removed, and grants an extra turn if 5 or more debuffs were removed. Books down to a 4-turn cooldown. Fantastic. And then on the passive, she revives all dead allies with 50% HP and 75% turn meter whenever this champion is killed. On the active effect, which is a 3-turn cooldown, places a block damage buff on all allies for 1 turn whenever an ally receives a bomb, poison, or HP burn. This is a fantastic skill, especially if you are doing Void Demon Lord. He will place poisons. Whole team just got block damage for a turn. Fantastic. In the arena, that move can counter a lot of champions. She's just so strong. And if you pair her with another reviver, you can just keep going back and forth, and keeping the entire team alive indefinitely. She also has a speed in all battles aura by 24%, same as Fushan, and that is 1% away from mythical speed auras. So she is fantastically powerful. Moving on to the High Elves. I found that High Elves to actually be a weaker faction on the Void Legendaries, but I'm going to go with Bellinor. He seems pretty strong. Pretty good base stats. On the A1, attacks one enemy, places increased crit rate on all allies for 1 turn if this attack is critical. Not going to help him, but it'll be nice for the other allies. AoE, decrease defense and weaken. These debuffs cannot be resisted when Xavia is on the same team. Also places perfect veil on this champion for 2 turns, giving him a little bit of damage reduction. But a AoE, decrease defense and weaken is so strong. I still don't have that on my main. And with being Void, you don't have to worry about affinity issues. So it's just fantastic. The A3 attacks one enemy, will attack the enemy with the lowest HP with any surplus damage if this attack kills an enemy. The surplus damage cannot be critical. I assume this skill hits really hard. I'll be honest, I've never seen Bellinor in action. And then this A4 is only active when Xavia is on the same team, but just basically activates his A3 and one of Xavia's skills. He's got crit rate in all battles. I'm not going to use that. Yeah, not that impressive to be honest, but it's a Void Legendary with decreased defense and weaken, so it's powerful. For Sacred Order, it was a bit of a debate between Venus and my choice, Cardiel. Cardiel is just so good. He is honestly one of my most wanted Void Legendaries, and that's saying something because on my main account, I have Cupidus, so I have Venus's partner champion. He's got speed in all battles by 19% on the aura. The A1 attacks one enemy and heals all allies by 7.5% of their max HP, so it's Godseeker Aniri's A1 on an AoE half again. Also places True Fear if the target is from Demon Spawn Undead. The A2 will do a full cleanse and then place block debuffs and protected revive on death. So you're cleansing, keeping debuffs off, and keeping your allies alive. The A3 places increased crit rate and crit damage on all allies for 2 turns. Then teams up with the entire team for an ally attack that decreases the cooldown by 1 turn if an enemy is killed. That is a very strong. Full team ally attacks are very powerful. Grand Oak Padraig has one on my account, and he also buffs up the nukers on top of it. He's fantastic. Then on the passive, allies receive 20% less damage from champions from the Demon Spawn Undead or Knights Revenant factions. A lot of those factions show up in high-end arena, so that's really powerful. The best part though, whenever an ally attacks, has a 15% chance to team up with them and join their attack with his default skill. So just extra damage, extra healing. Fantastic. That books up to a 30% chance. Fantastic. I would love to have this champion on my account, on any account. Moving on to the Barbarians. Ursaga Warcaller, great base speed, especially for a protector, which she is. On the A1, block active skills, 60% chance when booked. The A2 attacks all enemies. If they're attack based or if they have higher attack than defense, she'll place decreased crit damage and decrease attack. If they are tankier and have higher defense, she will put decreased speed and decreased defense. Fantastic skill. And then on the A3, places ally protection and strengthen on all allies. Places ally protection on all allies and then places strengthen on this champion for 3 turns. Fantastic protection. And then on the passive, decreases the damage all allies receive from critical hits by 30%. Fantastic in arena. And then this champion will receive that damage instead. I recommend building her in Swift Parry because she can end up eating a lot of damage. And if you build her in Swift Parry, then you've got a chance to preempt her death with an unkillable. Moving right along, we have Algren Tribe, and to very few people's surprise, we're going with Grazer Iron Gut. Fantastic Hydra damage dealer and good defense-based damage dealer in general. On the A1 is attacks all enemies, so great candidate for a stun set in PvE and great for a curse set in Hydra. Places shield on all allies except this champion for 1 turn. The value of the shield is proportional to this champion's defense. He is defense-based, so he's going to have a lot of it, which is good. The A2 attacks all enemies, heals this champion by 10% of the damage dealt, helping him stay alive. Increases the duration of all buffs on all allies for 1 turn. This is a great skill that helps you keep your buffs up 100% of the time, not having to worry about downtime between cooldowns at all. And this is an enemy max HP skill, so it is fantastic for boss fights. On the A3, attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance when booked of placing a provoke for 1 turn. Also places increased resistance and increased defense on all allies for 2 turns, so keeping them protected from debuffs as well as reducing their damage taken. Fantastic protection skill. And then the passive, whenever this champion is attacked, heals all allies except this champion by 70% of the damage received. That only works half as well against bosses. The active effect places an unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn before receiving a fatal hit. So it's hard to kill him, and it's even harder to kill his allies because he's healing them just for receiving damage. He is defense based though, so that won't be a ton, so don't expect too much from that. Moving on to the Lizardmen, I really struggled with this one, trying to ignore my own personal bias for Sulfurion. But man, the newest edition, Mighty Tealcrest, is just so good. On the A1, and this A1 is insane, I love it, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit heals all allies by 5% of this champion's max HP. This A1 heals better than Cardiel. It's ridiculous. Literally a 10% heal for all allies of this champion's max HP. Fantastic. Each hit also has a 100% chance when booked to fill the turn meter of the ally with the lowest turn meter by 10%. Gee whiz. This A1 is already good enough to be classified as a active skill in my opinion. The A2 attacks all enemies. Before attacking, does a full buff strip of the enemy team. Void affinity, so doesn't have to worry about weak hits. Then has a 100% chance when booked of placing block buffs and decreased speed. Fantastic for Hydra. Also fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%. This guy has your team going so quick, it's not even funny. The A3 places a increased resistance and perfect veil on all allies except this champion for 2 turns, so he will not be mischief target. Then he decreases the cooldown of all ally active skills except this champion's by 3 turns. Unfortunately, this skill cannot have its cooldown decreased by any means. This guy's insane. It's on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, so I say you don't need it. On the passive, turn meter fill effects on allies under crowd control are 30% more effective, and whenever a sheep debuff is removed or expires on an ally, heals them by 25% of their max HP, so they'll be coming back at 75% instead of 50, and places a increased speed buff on them for 1 turn. This guy is nuts for PvE, for PvP, you name it, he can do it. He's fantastic. For skinwalkers, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this hot take, but I'm going to go with Tumisia. The reason being, this champion can combo very well with several champions, one of which is my soapbox mythical Ashnar, as we will see as we read this kit. The A1 attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing decreased defense for 2 turns, has a 100% chance, and places it before attacking if the target is under HP burn. I love burn champions. The A2 attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of placing HP burn for 3 turns, and places stun on targets whose turn meter is greater than 50% or decreased speed on targets with less than 50%. Fantastic skill. 3-turn HP burn means she is set up perfectly to pair with a burn activator. On the A3, attacks one enemy, damage increases by 40% for each active HP burn in the battle. That's the key. When I'm talking about this champion being paired really well with Ashnar, Ashnar burns your allies. So even in situations like Hydra, where normally you would only be getting 160% extra damage, which is already insane, you are also stacking up with Ashnar an additional 240. So you are getting the full 400% increased damage with Ashnar on the team. Also has a 100% chance when booked of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15%, decreases the target's turn meter by additional 15 for each active HP burn debuff in the battle. Very strong skill when paired with certain champions. And on the passive, whenever an ally receives a freeze debuff, has a 50% chance of replacing it with a HP burn for 2 turns instead. This debuff cannot be blocked or removed. Whenever an ally or enemy is under HP burn, this champion is immune to crowd control. I think she is very solid. I know she empowers Marius, and honestly, I wouldn't do it. I love this champion too much. On the orcs, I went back and forth with a friend of mine about who is the better option here. He argues Warlord, Raka. She's got speed in all battles by 19%. Her A1 attacks one enemy, heals the ally with the lowest HP by 10% of this champion's max HP. The A2 is a full cleanse, then places increased attack and shield equal to 25% of this champion's max HP. Fantastic protection as well as boosting offense potential. A3 revives all dead allies with 50% HP and turn meter, then places block debuffs on all allies for 2 turns. We'll place the block debuffs even if there are no dead allies. Fantastic. Start around with this, so that way you're protecting yourself from debuffs, and then you should have that turn meter back, or that skill back in a PvE situation before anybody ever dies. On the passive, at the start of each turn, a part is on a 2-turn cooldown when booked. Fills the turn meter of all allies by 10%. Fantastic. And then at the start of each turn, places a continuous heal on the ally with the lowest HP for 2 turns. That cannot be this champion. She is so versatile. I wish I had her. Moving on to the demon spawn, Chalco the Blind. He's a relatively new champion at the time of this recording, and he is a beast. What can I say? This guy's nuts. On the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit will ignore 10% of the target's defense. Will ignore an additional 5% for each debuff on the target. Also steals 10% of the target's turn meter. So a 20% turn meter steal already. Has a 50% chance of repeating the attack against another target, except the initial target, who is under 2 or more debuffs. Occurs once per attack. This guy can put up so much damage so fast, it's not even funny. And that's whether that's arena, whether that's PvE, anywhere there's multiple targets, he could obliterate. On the A2, attacks one enemy 2 times. The first hit places block passive skills and decrease defense for 2 turns. Block passive skills is very rare. There's only a handful of champions in the entire game that has it, and even fewer that you can still get your hands on. In fact, I think he might be the only one in the game that you can get block passive skills from a shard. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments on that. I know that Ronda Rousey had it, but you can no longer get her, and Carnage, the mythical, has it, but you can only get him from Curse City, so he might be the only source of block passive skills that you can get from a shard. The second hit applies a debuff spread effect, taking all debuffs from the target and spreading them on all enemies. This effect will work even if the initial target is killed. This reads different than it actually works. This debuff spread will only happen if the second hit connects. The second hit has to connect for the debuff spread to occur. Grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy. Fantastic skill. He can wreck with this. It does a ton of damage, and it will screw up so many champions in the arena because passive skills are what make a lot of the meta champions so good. Attacks all enemies before attacking, places increased accuracy on this champion for 2 turns. Decreases the duration of all enemy buffs by 2 turns, and places decreased speed on all enemies for 2 turns. Fantastic skill. Decreased speed is so good, and because he places increased accuracy, you don't have to worry about building him with as much, because you can come in, start the battle with this move, and then go in with the Inducer of Panic, and you'll have the extra accuracy to land those debuffs. On the passive, and this is why I love this champion. This champion is immune to all crowd control except sheep. Build him in feral, and bada bing bada boom, he's pretty much immune to that too. Whenever an enemy attempts to place a crowd control debuff on this champion, instantly activates his A2, and it does not put the A2 on cooldown. Increases damage dealt by 5% for each debuff placed by this champion or an ally. The damage increase resets each time a skill is used on this champion's turn. Stacks up to 50%. Don't rely on that extra damage, it's nice to have. However, because he is immune to crowd control, he is a menace for Hydra. You actually want to see the Head of Torment come up, because then he will come in with this skill right here and decimate. And the funny thing is, the way it works, when he goes in and tries to attack with that A2, the Fearhead will actually try to put another fear on him. So he will come again and do the A2 twice every time he attacks the Head of Torment. He will obliterate it. And then you've got an exposed neck, which is free damage. This guy is a beast in Hydra. It's not good for auto. If you want to run this guy in Hydra, do it manually so that way you can get the most out of it. But he is insane. Right up there with like Inquisitor Shamael style gameplay. For the Undead Hordes, this was a very hard decision to make. However, for early game, with this setup in mind, I'm taking Nekret the Great. Yes, I know, taking Nekret over Siphi. If I didn't have so many revivers on this start, I would take Siphi. On my main, I would rather have Siphi or Valkanen. But for this kind of a start, from the perspective of this video, Nekret is better. He's got a triple hitter, A1 with decreased attack that cannot be resisted. The A2 reads very weird. He will team up with all allies under his ally protection. Ignore this teams up with all allies to attack on enemy. It's only the ones that are under his ally protection. Grants an extra turn if no enemies are killed during this attack. Fantastic for Fire Knight. The A3 places a block debuffs, ally protection, and strengthen on a target ally for 3 turns. The ally protection is protected. On the passives, he will put a shield on allies when they are attacked, and it will decrease the cooldown on his ally attack by 2 turns if the shield is placed. And then at the start of each round, places a block debuffs and strengthen for 3 turns on the ally with the lowest max HP, and also places a ally protection on them for 6 turns. That is nuts. So yeah, I would take Nekret because he's a great protector that can also have great offensive capabilities. Dark Elves, the obvious choice is Supreme KO. Everything he does is irresistible. He's got an AoE weaken on the A1. On the A2, he's got 3 poisons, and then also increases the duration of all enemy debuffs by 1 turn. And then on the A3, boosts up your team's capabilities by placing increased accuracy and decreased resistance. It's crazy. And then fills this champion's turn meter by 10% for each decreased resistance debuff placed. And then on the passive, decreases each target's accuracy, crit rate, and crit damage by 3% for each poison on them. So every time he pops that A3, or A2 rather, he's going to be decreasing those stats by 9%. Fantastic. Wish I had him. Thank you for the commenter on one of my previous videos that informed me that he is not a Doom Tower champion. I apologize if anyone was confused by that. Knight's Revenant, but I'm going to go with Queen of Hearts. Ally attack is so powerful in this game, especially early on, and she brings that on her A3, teams up with all allies. Before attacking, places increase attack, decreases the cooldown of this champion's buff strip A2 by 2 turns if the target is killed, which is fantastic. She removes all buffs, and then places Death Brand, which a target under Death Brand when killed is block revived, and then places True Fear on all enemies for 1 turn. Fills this champion's turn meter by 5% for each buff removed by this skill. You can potentially get an extra turn off of this. And then she has an A1 AoE drop defense and fills the turn meter of all allies by 5%. She's also great in arena because for every 10 buffs the enemy team receives, she will get an extra turn, allowing her to cut in. She's got great base speed. She herself is not going to do a lot of damage, but she puts in a lot of work. For the dwarves, it's a pretty obvious choice. It's got to be Senna Amberheart. She's got speed in all battles. She got A1, attacks one enemy, has a 60% chance to instantly activate a continuous heal buff on each ally, which synergizes so well with her passive. Places increased speed and 2 continuous heals on all allies for 2 turns, and then fills the turn meter of all allies by 20%. She's got to revive all dead allies with 50% HP and turn meter, and then she will ally attack with all of the allies revived by this skill, targeting the enemy with the lowest HP. It's fantastic. It's unique. I love it. And then the passive, whenever a continuous heal buff activates on an ally, fills the turn meter of all allies by 5%. And at the end of this champion's turn, increases the duration of a continuous heal buff on a random ally except this champion for 1 turn. She puts out so much turn meter, it's not even funny. Where the A1 can instantly activate a continuous heal on each ally, and she's putting out continuous heals on all allies, you can get a 20% turn meter fill. 20% if it's in Hydra. A 16% turn meter fill on the A1 with this champion. It's insane. It's awesome. I love it. For Shadowkin, Shuzan. Easy pick. Arbiter's Aura, 30% in Arena. She's got block active skills on the A1 will steal turn meter instead if the target's already under block active skills. The A2 targets an ally. If the ally is not under sheep, places increased attack, crit rate, and crit damage for 2 turns, then activates an instant turn effect on the ally. So your nuker is just as fast as your Shuzan is, which better be stupid fast because she is a machine. If the target is under a sheep, removes it from them. So she can also cleanse sheep, which is super powerful. And then on the A3, fills the turn meter of all allies by 20% and places increased speed on them for 2 turns. Also has a 100% chance of decreasing the turn meter of all enemies and placing decreased speed on them for 2 turns. This is a skill that makes her viable for PvE as well. Hydra, wave-based content, you name it, she's good for it. On the passive, increases this champion's accuracy equal to the amount of speed they have. You don't even have to worry about building her with a ton of accuracy because you should be building her fast, and it is nothing to build this champion with 300 speed. If you do that, then you throw an accuracy banner on her. Say goodbye to any accuracy requirements in the game. She's fantastic. Finally, we have the Sylvan Watchers. I'm going to go with Emic Trunkheart. I love this champion. I wish I had him. His aesthetic is super cool. He's got A1 that attacks one enemy and increases the value of all shield buffs on this champion by 25%. Also increases the shield buff on the ally with the lowest HP by 25%. Increased value cannot exceed 10,000. That's okay. The A2 attacks all enemies, places a shield on all allies equal to 30% of this champion's max HP, and also decreases the cooldown of all ally skills except this champion's by 1 turn. So kind of like a Painkeeper type thing. great for clan boss teams. Places unkillable on the A3 on all allies for 2 turns. Also places taunt and shield on this champion for 2 turns. The value of the shield is equal to 30% of this champion's max HP. So much shielding. When attacked while under a shield, has a 75% chance when booked of increasing the cooldown of a random skill on the attacker by 2 turns. Occurs once per attack. Whenever an ally drops below 20%, increases the damage dealt by that ally by 20%. Because he's putting unkillable on them, that is really strong. He's got taunt on him, so he's going to be receiving a lot of hits, which means he's going to be locking people out. This guy is so good. I wish I had him. But yeah, guys, that is, in my opinion, the best Void Legendary from each faction. Let me know what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? If you do, let me know what you think. I love hearing different opinions, especially if it is done respectfully. Well, guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I've been Corrodor. Stay tanky.